When you write a male character, does he just fall flat or not come across on the page, or people are saying that he doesn't seem believable? Let me give you some tips for how to write male characters that are easy and that you can implement in minutes. And don't worry, I'm going to give you an example towards the end of this video from a book I just read that shows you exactly how one author put all of those practices into play. When I first started out, one of the hardest things for me to learn was to write believable male characters. Partly because I'm not a male, and also because I think it's really hard to get into the opposite gender's frame of mind. So I had to really study how strong male characters are created and what makes them unique from female characters. The number one difference between the two is the lens through which they see the world. Women see the world in one way, men see it in another way. And yes, some of what I'm going to give you here is stereotypical, and you can feel free to bend that stereotype and make it a little bit different to make your character unique. However, there are some commonalities between 99% of male characters that you want to use, and one of them is that lens. When men look at the world, they typically see things as a problem to solve. My husband has a couple engineering degrees, and everything around him is like this puzzle he's going to put together and figure out. He loves fixing the cars and wiring things up and figuring out things like that. That is definitely not my strength. I see it more from an emotional standpoint where he is looking at it from an outside problem to be solved. So his lens is different. His life experiences are different too. Boys are generally expected to be the man of the house or to, man up or climb that tree or jump off that cliff into the water. Whatever those kind of typical boy activities are, that shapes how they see the world and how they approach things. In general, male characters tend to take the lead or take more risks. You want the reader to be able to believe that this person can solve the problems or rescue the child or get from A to B. So you've got to give them some qualities that make them seem that way. And that's the second tip with writing a male character. You need to give them believable skills and strengths. They should come from their history as well. We aren't just born in general with a vast knowledge of, say, science. That is something that your character would gain over years of study and being a scientist. Look at Jeff Goldblum in Independence Day. One of his skills and strengths was his ability to understand the science and the aliens and to figure out a way to battle those aliens. It wasn't a skill and strength that the guy that played the president or that Will Smith's character had. They had different skills and strengths. The guy that played the president kind of kept everybody calm. He was very diplomatic. He kind of stayed on top of things. He took the lead when he needed to. Will Smith's character is the fly into danger, take on the aliens, boom, 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 I'm going to shoot them and kill them kind of guy.
Welcome to Earth.
So they each had different skills and strengths that were honed by their pasts. Your male characters also need weaknesses. It's no good to just always be the hero. Woohoo, everything goes your way. That's not really good because nobody likes that person. I don't know if you guys watch Shrinking on Apple, but Brian, who is the main character's best friend, says throughout the whole first season, everything goes my way, even as we see that things don't necessarily always go his way. And we can see that those words that he uses are kind of masking some vulnerability and some weaknesses that he has. So his outward actions are showing us that he has some insecurities and worries and doubts, which is great because in the second season, they really exploit those weaknesses and insecurities and force Brian to confront them. So that's what you want to do with your male characters. You want to give them weaknesses and then force them to confront them. Jason Segel's character in Shrinking has a really screwed up relationship with his daughter because he kind of checked out after his wife died. And so one of his weaknesses is facing these conflicts that he doesn't want to deal with. And throughout both seasons, he has to confront this grief and what he's gone through and what he has done in order to begin to heal his relationship with his daughter. Now, he doesn't do it in one episode, and your character should not do it in one chapter or one scene. People take gradual baby steps towards confronting the things that scare them or towards dealing with the things that are difficult. So each of your scenes, you're going to want to have your male character have that weakness sort of rise its ugly head, and he's going to have to deal with it a little bit. A third way to make your male characters more believable and stronger is to use their profession as part of the way that they talk and look at the world. Like I said earlier, my husband's an engineer. He also talks in an engineering kind of way, in a problem-solving sort of way. He doesn't get deep into his feelings and into the mushy parts. He's more analytical, data-driven, all of that kind of things. And the conversations that we have are about like scientific things or history things. They're not about how are you feeling today? Because in general, male characters don't delve deeply into their emotions. But on top of that, whatever their profession is would cause them to speak in a way that reflects that profession. Back to Shrinking, Jason Segel and Harrison Ford's characters are both therapists. So everything that they say and the way that they deal with confrontations and problems in other people comes from that empathy, digging deep for the truth, therapist sort of approach. Whereas if you had a character that was a carpenter or a fireman or a policeman, they would have the elements of their profession at play when they spoke and when they took actions. If your character is a police detective, he's going to be less likely to trust people, and he's going to be looking for the clues that tell him that this person isn't telling the truth or is telling the truth. So look at what your character's profession is and sit down and list a bunch of characteristics and traits that apply to that profession. Then go back and look at your scene and say, okay, how can I put this empathy into this scene? How can I put his ability to take care of others into this scene? How can I put his reluctance to talk about his feelings in this scene? Because that's what makes the character more believable. If you have somebody that's like a rough and tumble guy and he's just blaring about his feelings for pages and pages and pages, the reader is not going to find that believable. Like, let's say John McClane in Die Hard, you're going to see his actions show how he feels. His actions demonstrate his ability to overcome impossible challenges to rescue people he loves. So that's number 4. Male characters are more action-driven, so let their actions show who they are and what's important to them and what they want to go after. When you're having a very emotional scene between a male and female character, you can have your male character avoid the conversation by doing stuff, and that would come across as pretty believable. The 5th tip is that male characters don't speak for pages and pages and pages, and they don't think for pages and pages and pages. When you read male characters, pay attention to the white space on the page. In Survive the Night, which is the book that I have for the example, the male character's narrative is much shorter, has a lot more short sentences than the female. The male and female characters should come across differently, even in their thoughts, not just in their dialogue. So you want it to be faster paced, quicker, less delving into how am I feeling right now and how is this affecting me? That doesn't mean you can't write a badass female character, which is something I talk about in this video here. Male characters are going to tend to act and not dwell on their feelings, and they're also going to use their skills and strengths to take those actions, but also be kind of humbled and set back by their weaknesses. What I mean by that is if your male character tends to be somebody who avoids conflict, then him not having those important conversations throughout the book will only create more conflict. As we all know, when you avoid the things you need to talk about, it creates more conflict. So his weakness will create additional conflict to the point where he's going to have to eventually deal with it and have that difficult conversation. A book is a slow build towards change, just like in real life. None of us change overnight. So the male character is going to change a little bit more with each subsequent scene in your book. Are you dying to write a book this year but don't know where to start or how to create a plot or what you should be writing and what you should be leaving out? Then come join the Writers Bootcamp taught by me, a New York Times, USA Today, Publishers Weekly, and Amazon best-selling author. I've published 87 books in 24 countries. I have sold 8 million copies. I may not know how to do my taxes, but I definitely know how a book goes together, and I'm going to teach you in 12 weeks with the Writers Bootcamp. We're going to talk about everything from how to create a turning point, how to do scene and sequel, how to create characters that people actually care about, when to put the backstory in, when to leave it out, all of those components that seem so confusing and so overwhelming when you first sit down to write. I'm going to carry you from beginning to end, and at the same time, I'm going to be working on a book of my own, so I'm following along on this journey with you as well. You'll be able to ask questions. We'll have a special live that is only open to people in the class, and you will be able to access these lessons forever. When you start the next book or the next one and say, okay, let me review that information about how to do backstory. There will be handouts, there will be tons of videos that will not be seen on my channel. If you sign up now, you can get special pre-order pricing and use code YouTube for an extra 10% off. And let's write that book together. And here's a bonus tip. One of the things that I've mentioned in other videos is a save the cat moment. If you have a really gruff, not going to be emotional male character, One of the ways to soften them for the reader and to give the reader hope that this character can work out or can succeed is a save the cat moment. That's a moment when the male character does something kind or nice. In Nobody with Bob Odenkirk, he literally saves a cat. You don't have to have that happen. You don't have to create a massive save the cat moment like your hero runs in and saves 5 kids from a burning building. Save the cat moments happen in the small moments as well as in the big moments. So those little things that your male character does, like being nice to his grandma or paying for the coffee of the person behind him. And it's a great way to show the reader that this is a character they should get behind. In Riley Sager's Survive the Night, there is a female main character who carries about 90% of the book. And then there's a couple of other male characters. She has signed on for this ride home because she's desperate to get away from the campus that she was living on where her best friend was killed by a serial killer. And pretty soon after she gets in the car, she starts to wonder if the guy that she's riding with, this stranger, is the campus killer. So by the time Riley Sager puts the male character's point of view on page 126, we're looking for proof that he is the campus killer. And the great thing that Riley Sager does in this book is keeps it vague enough that you kind of like him, but also are suspicious that he's the killer. Like I said in the tips, his inner thoughts and his dialogue is very short. It's not going on and on and on. There's a lot he should have done tonight, starting with keeping his damn mouth shut. That sounds more like a guy than a girl. 20 Questions was a mistake. He realizes that now. That's all his fault. He's man enough to admit it. All of these are little short sentences that keep the pace going pretty quickly and also seem realistic for a male character. Riley Sager does a great job setting this character up as a possible serial killer, which keeps you guessing until the very end. He's got rope in his trunk. He admits in his head that he lied to her. He talks about how easily she jumped into his car and went along with his plan. So by the time you get through the scene with the male character, you are really worried for the protagonist and whether she's going to get out of the car in time. He also doesn't dwell a long time on his past or on his backstory. When he goes into the trunk of his car, he's not thinking about things with Charlie. He is thinking about the task that he has to do in order to accomplish the job that he's here for. The only backstory that he really has is about the metal toolkit that he sees. Next to the cardboard box is a metal toolkit, the same one his piece of crap dad kept in the garage when he was a kid. Now his dad is dead and the toolbox is his. Boom, that's his backstory. It was triggered by seeing the toolbox, and that's all he thinks about it for because men tend to be action-driven, not thought-driven. So right there, you've set up this male character as somebody that is scary and is bringing something scary to the table. And just like I talked about earlier, this male character has a problem and he goes about taking the actions he needs to solve it. So when you have male characters that are problem solvers, that use their skills and strengths, and you create realistic thoughts and dialogue based on their history and their profession, then you create a fully fleshed out male character that comes to life on the page. And if you want to know more about writing male dialogue so that it's really believable, check out this video here. I also have some videos on writing great female characters, so there's a whole bunch there in the character playlist for you to choose from.